What up, peeps, and welcome to a Finance Guy podcast, a show for all genders and species about bringing some humanity and a bit of fun to the world of finance and tech and leaving you with a little something that can help you on your way. All right, please enjoy. Thanks. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Finance Guys and Tech podcast and Finance Guys TV. Today we welcome very special guest, Mr. Dalmar Sheikh. Dalmar, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on.
Likewise, pleasure to be here.
We'll give people a little background real quick and then we'll jump into it. Dalmar is the regional leader for data center expansion strategy for Asia Pacific, and his team of 14 now, right?
15.
15 now. They ensure that we never run out of data center space for customers. Dalmar got his undergrad degree in international business from the University of Northern British Columbia, right, in Prince George.
Correct, UNBC.
And UNBC, for you guys in the know out there. And I pieced together a little bit of your work history. You were at a couple companies, Colt, Pixet. Pixet, right? And you came to AWS 8 years ago in 2012.
Correct.
So
yeah.
you're a real old dog here.
I know.
In space.
I know. It's you know what they say about working at Amazon, right? It's like dog years,
yeah,
right?
It's like Inception. Like
yeah, exactly.
Levels down. You're like 50 years experience, pretty much.
Correct.
But yeah, I think you've got a pretty interesting background, which we definitely wanted to talk about a little bit.
And Dalmar, understand if I understand correctly, you know, like 6 languages. Is that
No.
correct?
Let me correct you on that. I'll say I speak 3 languages, but
Okay.
I could probably bullshit in 5 more. You
Wow.
know? So,
Which 8 languages?
which is different than saying I'm fluent or speak. You know.
I can pretty much bullshit in 1 language. Wait, what are the 3 that you think?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm ethnically Somali, right? So I speak my mother tongue, English, and Japanese. I spent 18 years in Japan, so.
Very cool.
In fact, you joined in AWS in Japan itself, correct?
Correct, yes. I was hired in Japan.
Okay.
Well, tell us a little bit, like, let's start back from the beginning. Like, where are you from? Like, what was it like growing up? Give us kind of like the beginning of your journey, because I think you've got a pretty unique
Like Dalmar Sheikh
experience.
as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
Yeah,
but,
we do. Yeah, we do.
Well, so I'm ethnically Somali. Both my mom and dad are Somalis. I was born in Yemen. Moved back to Somalia when I was about a year and a half.
And Yemen is where exactly?
The Middle East, right?
Okay,
so it's
Remember from the Risk board, that board game? There's a Yemen, I think.
Yeah, the Yemen. So I was born at that time. Yemen was split into South and North Yemen. I was born in South Yemen, Aden, and moved back to Somalia as a kid. My dad, who was a Somali diplomat, was transferred to Uganda, so where I finished my elementary school, primary school. Following that, spent some time in Italy, and then went to Iran, lived in Iran for...
5th country.
Yeah, we lived in Iran for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. And then after that, I moved to Nigeria, where I finished my high school, King's College.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's your 16, 17 at this point. You've been all over.
Yeah. I mean, and then in the middle of all that, and I'm visiting family. You know, part of my family lived in Dubai, so I would spend summers and extended periods of my vacation in Dubai.
Your brothers, sisters?
My brothers and sisters, siblings.
How many siblings?
So I have a huge family. So 8 brothers and sisters.
Whoa, cool.
So
was that fun times growing up?
great, yeah, lovely. I mean, huge families is part of the Somali culture. So, and then I spent time in Sudan. My father was posted in Sudan. Prior to actually even moving to Uganda from Somalia, my dad was posted in several other countries, including Iran. He was posted in China. He was posted in England. Posted in France.
Was he a spy?
No, he's a Somali diplomat. So he was a Somali ambassador at that time. That's a little bit of my background. So.
Yeah. And then so what was your undergrad degree? You ended up in Prince George, international business. Like, what were you thinking, like, after this youth of traveling around the globe?
So
international had to already come. So international business, international was already taken care of. He was only doing business over there.
Just teaching, huh?
yeah.
He was teaching.
So I also went to University of South Carolina. So after graduating from high school in Nigeria, I went to University of South Carolina, but I did not finish my undergraduate there. I finished it at UNBC. I changed my major multiple times. So when I first moved to the States to go to college, I started out with economics.
Okay.
Switched.
What were you like? Were you a sports guy, a book kid? Like, what was
So
your thing?
so that's the weird thing, right?
Yeah.
So because I lived in so many different cultures, to a large degree, I was always a foreigner, right? Yes, I'm an African living in another African country, but I'm Somali, I'm not Ugandan. I'm Somali, I'm not Nigerian. I'm Somali, I'm not Iranian. So I had to always find a way to assimilate, copy, watch. How do I build friends? So that's always been my strength. So as a kid, I traveled in all circles, right? So, let's take high school. I hang out with the jocks. I hang out with the geeks. I hang out with, everybody, right? In fact, a lot of my formative years, in elementary school and middle school, I was the kid teachers would really pair with new students because I was connected to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I did not, I was not part of one particular group.
Yeah.
I had friends across the whole spectrum of the social strata in high school.
You had that
And
ambassador type of.
that's just,
DNA.
I wanted to fit in, right? Because that's you end up going to a certain place and you realize, the sports guys welcome you more than, the studious ones.
Yeah.
You go to another country or another school and you find the studious guys welcome you more than the sports guys. And you go to another place, the bad boys and bad girls welcome you more than, so it's always been, I've always played, with every group that I hang out with, yeah.
Yeah. And so what were you thinking kind of going into international business? What was your idea?
Yeah, so,
But were you even kidding about studies, just having fun,
no, my first 2 years in college, that's exactly what it was. And
Okay.
it was a lot of fun. Enjoyed way too much. And only in the last, I would say, towards the end of my third or fourth year did I get very serious about, God, I've been doing this for a long time, I better finish. And that's what it was.
Yeah. And so what were you thinking you would do after school? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to get into?
Not really, right? I always knew that I wanted to do something international. I was, having left the African continent many, many years ago, I was very, very interested in finding a way back to the continent, whether through international business. I would say in my younger days, because of the influence of my father and the diplomatic circles in which we lived in, yes, I wanted to work for, the UN and organizations like those. But as I got older, I had no interest in working for these organizations and wanted to move into doing business. And with my international background, I felt, I could operate in any culture because of the way I grew up.
Yeah.
And thus international business.
Yeah. And then so what was the first gig out of undergrad?
So initially through my fourth year, I worked as an assistant marketing manager for a small financial company. So personal investment, investment or finance advisory group, and my role was to make sure that we marketed our services and connected our advisors with our consultants, with customers. And then I ended up moving to Japan soon after, And
Because of the job?
yeah, I mean, my wife, back then, my girlfriend, fiance, she's Japanese and had moved back home, and I wanted to do something different, so I thought, why don't I pack up and just go on an adventure and go to Japan and visit her and spend some time there.
Right on.
And I ended up staying 18 years.
Wow, you liked it?
I really enjoyed it. It was very different culture. Food is great. People are polite, very, very safe, very clean, very dense. I lived in Tokyo, but I had a great time.
Yeah. And so did you go and just find you're in a new country?
And so I went out there, initially the path of a lot of new foreigners, young foreigners that go to Japan. I did various odd jobs. I think after a year and a half, 2 years, I got a job at a small ISP and doing
ISP?
Internet service provider.
Yeah.
For others, right? And entered from the ground up, doing sales, got into project management, and then went back to sales, and I had very successful run doing sales.
And was that kind of like how you converged on cloud computing at some point?
Yeah, so I mean, I got involved in the data center world very, very early. Data center, managed services, telecom, services, very, very early, 1999, 2000. Ahead of the curve of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I ended up just growing up in that industry.
Yeah, yeah.
And, ended up, Amazon became a customer of mine.
Okay.
And through that, I was introduced to a job within Amazon. Yeah.
So you were working with the data center supplier?
Yes.
Okay.
And what colo guy?
Okay, got it. And then what was like that Amazon origin story 8 years ago? How did
So that was the story, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, my current manager right now was my customer.
Oh.
So I was negotiating opposite of him, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
on the other side.
Yeah.
And we concluded a deal, and after the deal, they asked me to join, and I did join.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And what was like kind of your thoughts on Amazon at the time? Was it anything surprising about coming over here, or what did you expect it would be like?
Those are early days, right? So,
Yep.
our footprint was small. The number of employees within the organization, especially infrastructure, very, very small. We probably had 5 or 7 people. You can imagine.
That's it?
Yeah, well, like 7 or 8 people, maybe 8, less than 10, right? And I started coming out. My manager at the time was based in Seattle, and one of the things that having spent that number of years growing up in Japan, I grew up in a very Japanese. Even though I worked for a lot of foreign companies, I was very, very influenced by the culture I lived in, and it was very refreshing to come to a company that moved at the speed of light in terms of decision making. They knew what they had to do, they knew what direction they're going, and they did not hesitate or balk at making very big decisions. I'm talking spend everything very quickly.
Did it take some getting used to? Was there
It did. And I was used to, building consensus and negotiating and, back and forth meetings, doing a lot of this and then making the decision. Once you make the decision, you move. But within Amazon, it was, get the data and do a quick analysis and make that decision. Because you know what direction you're going to. Why delay it any further? Why spend 3 or 4 months when you know that's just going to impact your timelines, right? So.
And so, were you working in the office in Japan
Yes.
for a few years?
Yes.
And then when did you make the move?
So
Before that, I was under the impression that you started in ops, but
No. So I started as I was the first Amazon biz dev person based in Asia.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So in fact, a full circle, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing
Now that you're an APAC guy.
the role I was initially hired to do.
Oh yeah.
Is that, 8 years later,
You
right?
started the role actually.
Yeah, I was the first guy, regionally based, right? I mean, they had other people, but they're all based in Seattle. I was the first regionally based person hired.
And so your job was to go out and secure the supply side for
So I was doing that for the first 7 months, and then I think sometime in the 7th or 8th month into my tenure, there was an organizational shift, and they're trying to localize. As you know now, we've localized quite a bit. To localize a lot of the leadership and centralize it rather than having too many reporting lines all the way back to Seattle, right? And I was asked by the leadership at the time to, hey, Dalmar, why don't you run operations? And please understand, I came from project management and sales, very, very heavy on the sales side. And I think the market freaked out. Wow, Dalmar's doing operations, right? He's a sales guy, right? And it was very interesting. I did that for 3 years. I grew the team. It was fantastic. I enjoyed it. Developed a lot of leaders within the organization. And a lot of those leaders are still in place, right? Running the organization in Japan. And 2015, my son, at the time, he was finishing his middle school, 8th grade. And he was a very big basketball fan, and he played it. He loved basketball. He's like, Dad, I want to move to the US. I want to play basketball. Japan, yes, I can play, but I want to be exposed to the competition and the culture. And so I went, talked to my boss at the time. I said, look, I want to look at opportunities to move to the US. And he said, hey, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, think about it and then come back and talk to me. And I had a great idea. I put it on paper. I presented to him what I wanted to do that was a gap in the organization at the time. He liked it.
What was that?
I think a lot of companies face this. Once you go from a very centralized organization and you decide to regionalize, it's very important to regionalize. Right? You're close to your customers, your local markets, and you're empowering your leaders in those regions, but you tend to lose a lot of the central functions, standardization, across the organization. So you have each region doing its own thing. So one of the ideas I suggested was to build up a central ops organization that helped to create global process owners across and drive standardization, purely owning that top level, but implementation would be owned locally, right? He liked the idea. I came here, I moved out here, started that organization.
That was 2015?
2015.
Yeah, okay.
And then I moved out of that, and I did the ICM role, infrastructure country manager role. I was helping our efforts in South Africa. I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved into my current role April 2019.
Right on. And now you're back managing the Asia Pacific.
Back to APAC, yeah, which is.
And the other goal, was it also served because we talked about it, the basketball goal?
Yeah, it was served. Yeah, so very, very. So my son is playing for a prep school out in Maine on the East Coast, grinding away. So he's happy, family's happy,
and he's a kind of tall kid. You mentioned.
No. He's 6 foot, so.
Tall for.
Yeah, but but basketball, no. Right. So
he's a guard.
He's a guard. Yeah, he's a point guard. Yeah.
Right on. And how's he liking playing in the U.S.? Is it?
He's loving it. I mean, what is it? It's been 4.5 years now. So.
And you go out there for tournaments, and he's serious, right?
He's serious. It's a grind. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you, now that you're back kind of managing a team, you kind of come full circle, what is it that you kind of impart on your team? Do you kind of see in them where you were 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, just starting out, and do you give them some lessons that you've learned?
Oh yeah, there's challenges, right? So first of all, in I would say in an environment like ours, right? Speed, and the scale we operate, very rarely seen out there. It's huge, right? So with that comes a lot of ambiguity, right? You've got to make critical decisions with limited information. And the expectation is my team is on the ground, has the data, knows what's going on, and how to translate that for the leadership back here to be able to, make those decisions very quickly.
Yeah.
Right?
So your team is kind of in each of our clusters. They're the ones who own the strategy.
Yeah, the strategy, for that supply.
Yeah.
What do we do? How does it fit into our demand? How do we expedite? How do we slow down? There's a whole bunch of factors go into that, right?
So Dalmar, how do you see this role? Because I'm always in this conundrum, like we being Amazon, is this more like a relationship role, or is this very data-oriented role? Or is it like a mix, for you?
It's both. It's a mix because data is over. We're Amazon. Data is key. Not only Amazon, data is very important for everybody, right? Especially when you're spending what we're spending. Data is going to be very, very important to be able to convince your leaders and stakeholders that this is the right decision. You got to have the data. But at the same time, we're operating in different cultures where a relationship is very important. You've got to maintain the relationship. People have got to trust you. Sometimes we need to ask for certain things because of their criticality, because of speed and timing, and things pull in, things push out. So if you don't have the right relationship, people will not trust you, right? So relationship is very important. And in the areas we work with, in the cultures we work in, relationship is very key.
Yeah.
You mean internal and external relationships?
Both. I mean, you got to have the right. You have stakeholders here, right? Ultimately, my team is delivering the capacity, but I have my own internal customers that consume that capacity. So I've got to work with them. Your stakeholders, the finance teams. I've got to sit down with you and explain my logic for the deal structure that we're bringing forward, right? Or help you think outside your traditional box, how you think, and say, hey, look, this is what we traditionally do, but here, this is what I'd like to do, and this is what makes the best sense, and work with you. So having those relations, being able to do that is very, very important.
Yeah, so what do you impart to your team then to kind of coach them through this marriage of relationship and the data? Like, what makes someone successful on your team, and how do you what do you tell them as guidance?
Well, the most important thing is, from a leadership perspective, and I've told this to other previous teams that I've managed and worked with, to me, there are a couple of important things. I'm not worried about, I'm the boss. It's not something that I'm absolutely interested in. What is key to me is that we get the job done, and we do it while we're having fun, right? Because it's very easy to lose people, make the wrong decision if they're stressed out, they're unhappy. I try to balance that, right? And I'm flexible in my approach because I know that there are days where I'll expect them to work very long hours because of the nature of what we do and the geographies in which we operate. I could be talking to 3 different time zones at the same time, so somebody has to take the hit and take a phone call at 2 a.m. A lot of the times it's me. So being flexible enough and giving your employees that flexibility to say, look, this is very important to me. Let's get this done. I'm okay if you delay that by that, or you take, Friday off. Being able to give them that balance among all the things is very, very important.
Yeah.
It's very easy for employees to get very, very stressed out. They believe they're doing the right job, but since they're not in front of the top leadership here sitting, who have a totally different view, because that's their job, they ask very pointed. You've been in those meetings where the team does not understand. The team basically says, "Look, I was asked to do this and I've done it. Why can't we do it? Let's move forward. Why are you wasting time?" And plus, they've got relationship here to manage. They've gone out to these partners, and they've said, "Hey, please give me something." This partner worked hard, and then something here changed that impacts.
Something in Seattle changed.
It changed that impacts.
They've got to go back.
Exactly. They got to go back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I know you worked hard for me and you did this for me, but something changed in demand. Something changed in this. Something. I can't. Right. So, and they get frustrated. So it's very, very important that I guide them through those frustrations and say, "Look, this is what we have to do." So.
Yeah, and Dalmar, I've been involved with Dalmar in a lot of negotiations, and I really appreciate his style of negotiating. Just walk us through the style. This is a Japanese term you always talk about.
No. We'll talk about that separately.
Okay.
But culturally, it's very, very common for customers that have a big spend and power to get aggressive with their service providers and say, "Hey, I'm your customer." Granted, part of our leadership principles, really customer obsession. We really got to give the customer what they want, but it's also very important in some cultures, whereas it might be common in the U.S. to lose your temper and do certain things. In some cultures, look, he's an executive. You've got to give him that respect. You're talking to him in front of his staff. You cannot embarrass him or her in front of him. So it's very important to be able to make your demands what you want without disrespect, in a very respectful way. That's very, very important, right? It's that balance, right? That you have to be aware, and the cultural sensitivities that go. That executive is a very big person in their culture.
In his country,
or he's our country. So you cannot sit here, pound the table, and embarrass them in front of their employees or their other partners. So it's very important, to understand how you manage through that. And most people are reasonable. If you tell them, "Look, this is what I want. I need your help to get this done." Right? If you don't, this is going to be very difficult for me to do this. You've got to, so it's, how you communicate is very, very important.
The translation, I think that's the key. Like if you can immediately switch to a different culture, and then when you're negotiating with somebody else, you have to shift to their culture. So it's very important, actually.
And there are times where I have lost my shit. And I've hung up on people, and I did it for the right reasons because I know the reaction I'm going to get. It wasn't. It was a calculated move. It wasn't pure and emotional driven. It wasn't that. I intentionally did that, and I got the reaction that I wanted and the results that I wanted. Right.
And it was that kind of like you reading like the level of respect they were giving you. And
exactly, right? So it is a balance, right?
I just am hearing like your story from growing up and hearing this now, it seems like it's a direct like use of all the skills from when you were traveling around to different schools that you're applying now. Do you see it as kind of like you're kind of drawing off your youth and all those skills you learned?
Look, it is, these things come in, right? It is very funny that Amazon is a very data-driven organization, and I've learned that over the years, since it's a skill set and I've developed. One of my strengths is being able to read the intangibles, how body, because of how I've grown with all the different cultures, and being able to read certain reactions and. And be weird to come and say, "Hey, look, that's the feeling that I get," right? But it's not data driven, but it's a very valuable,
It's intuition. Let's come at this from a different angle. I'm sort of curious, what outside of work kind of gets you going? What are some of your interests outside of the office and outside of the job?
So I'll be honest. Right now, I'm heavily consumed by my work. Because I'm based in Seattle. My team is based across multiple countries in Asia. I do not expect them to call me at their 5 a.m. or their 4 a.m. So in fact, what I do is I work late. I'm on phone calls, 7, 8, 9, 10, sometimes 11 p.m., sometimes midnight. And look, I don't want to make it sound like I'm being overworked or beaten into, No, absolutely the opposite. It's what I choose to do for my team to earn their trust. At the same time, I'll balance it. Like, so for example, my team, they're in Asia, their Friday, their Saturday is my Friday. So all silent. So I might take Friday off. Right? I'll have to manage my time.
Yeah.
Unless there's something urgent, I'll come to it. But since I've worked Monday through Wednesday until 10 p.m. You know what? Friday I'm gonna take the day off.
You got to be smart and kind of.
You got to balance it, right? You got to balance it, and that's an intentional shifting of my hours that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And my boss is okay with it, right? And they understand it, right? Especially if you're dealing with these geographies, right?
Yeah.
But outside work, I really enjoy spending time with my two boys.
Yeah.
My oldest son plays basketball. My youngest son is starting basketball. So I'm either watching them or going to their games, and you've seen me travel to Maine to go watch my son.
Yeah.
So that consumes a lot of my time, right? Aside from that, I really, don't have a lot of hobbies. But I guess I should pick up some hobby.
I mean,
Charlie's a hobby guy, he has so many hobbies,
One of the sayings.
Aspirationally, there are so many things that I want to do.
I heard a saying once someone said is don't should on yourself. People, it's so easy for us to say, oh, I should do this, I should do that, and honestly, if you feel like in alignment, then you should.
I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I'm
Yeah. You watch your sons play ball.
Yeah, that's my stress reliever, right?
Yeah.
So I enjoy that. And
Did you teach him how to shoot? Do you know how to play ball?
No, I grew up playing football, soccer, right? As you would call it in America, right? But
on this podcast, we know what football means.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual foot one,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I grew up playing football, right? But basketball is it's a big international sport, and with the NBA and all the players, we grew up around it. But
They kind of learned it. They kind of got
the tutors, not coaches and teams, and
Yeah.
No.
What do you What do you read or watch outside of work? Do you watch movies, or do you read the news, or how do you?
No, I
Indian movies,
Yeah. Bollywood, right?
Bollywood.
No, I watch movies. Yeah. I read some, but nothing out of the extraordinary.
What's something you really liked recently?
Movie? Let's see. What did I watch recently? Jeez. What was the last movie that
Why
I
did you
watched?
say Bollywood? Does he like Bollywood?
Yeah, if you go to his room, you see posters of Bollywood movies.
Oh, really? Where'd you get those from?
India. So bought some.
Okay.
Oh.
So you kind of. I think Slumdog Millionaire is the only one I know.
No,
that,
so I was in a meeting with one of the vendors, and Dalmar started talking about Indian actors, Indian movies,
Oh, right
I said,
on.
man, that's pretty cool,
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. So, culturally in Somalia, we watched as kids. Bollywood's huge, right? It's watched a lot. So as a kid, I grew up watching Bollywood, right? So
Yeah.
pretty interesting. And here's a weird thing, right? Indian movies culturally, more aligned with the Somali culture than American movies were, right? Or are, right? And not to say that we didn't watch American movies, but we did. But
What are some of the features, the cultural
There could be
features?
16 songs in a movie,
Oh yeah, people.
I love
And the heroes and heroines would be dancing around trees.
And by the way, and Bollywood has changed, right? Now it's more like Hollywood than, olden times it was very, there wasn't too much of that openly overt sexuality and stuff that you see in or that could possibly be in a lot of the Hollywood movies, right?
Yeah.
So, and that appealed to the
mass commercial.
the cultural conservatives back,
Yeah. So I got to get into this Bollywood thing.
Yeah, you should, you know.
Yeah. What about like reading? Do you like read the news, or do you like to? Like,
I watch a lot of current affairs.
Only works, you know.
Well, I mean, that's just kind of your art form. I've noticed is kind of like the way that you approach work, and the way that like I work with your team directly, and like you can tell when they come to a project they have an enthusiasm about.
Yeah.
So like you bring an art to it that is kind of, I don't know. There's an art and a science. And
look, I think that you have to. I believe my responsibility is to excite my team. Right? It's very, very important that I excite them in terms of the scope they do, the scope of responsibility I give them, the trust I give them, the training that I go out and get for them, or the company offers, and the relationship we have, and how I develop the team. Right? So. That is very important to me. I'm very, very interested in like really growing my team, because here's the trick, right? So they're the ones that are really doing the job, right? If you lose an employee or the right employee, it will set you back 3 to 6 months or even longer to fill that role, right?
And I agree with like I can actually concur to what Dalmar is saying, because I was in a call. We recruited a guy in India some time back, and he was negotiating with one of the vendors, and in the call he told Dalmar, thanks for sending me to that training in Japan. It helped me negotiate better in India.
Oh wow!
So I was like, that's not. He came from a real estate world, and he was negotiating with Colo. And a comment coming from him in a call like this, it was pretty good.
Listen, we've got to excite our people, right? So it is very, very important, and I've always enjoyed exciting my team. I mean, throughout my working experience, you can go back to people that I've managed 15 years, 16 years ago. We're still friends, we're still contacted, we're still connected, and the theme that you'll get across their feedback is, I always look towards exciting the team. It's very, very important. We'll get the job done. You've got to get the job done. You have a responsibility. You have an employment contract. The company's paying you, but let's have fun. Learn, grow, make it better while we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's another question we always ask our guests about what historical figures they.
Yeah.
Should we go there?
Yeah, we should.
That one sometimes digs up something interesting. If you were to like go back in time and have lunch with any 3 historical figures, or just anybody in general, who would you want to like kind of hang out with and ask a few questions?
Geez, that's difficult. I don't know.
Anybody throughout history, you could park it and think about it a little. We always ask.
Let me park that and come back, because
Your previous girlfriends also,
yeah. So she's not a historical figure.
Man. But well, why don't we kind of just like ask you like, just generally now, like what is like maybe your like general philosophy in life? Like what do you think? Like how do you try to live your life? What's your outlook these days?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this, right? I think that if you do, and I have a lot of people that I mentor, and there are 2 things that I tell them, right? One is obviously, get new skill set, build your new skill set, and then the other is the secret is simple, like you've got to simple stuff, like just exactly how your mama, I would say what mama used to tell you, right? Dress clean, be honest, be on time, do your work, be respectful. Those are all the little things that you got to do. If you do that, everything will fall in place. That's it.
Follow the basics.
Yeah, basics, yeah. Nothing complicated. Yeah. And that's how I want to live, right? I'm always respectful. There are days where I'm frustrated, and the weird thing about me is I wear my emotions. People can really tell when I'm upset or unhappy. It shows in my face. But
I've never seen an unhappy Dalmar.
I tried. I intentionally. I maybe have been hiding it from Sid, right? So, but that's it for me. It's just go out, say good morning to your neighbor, just simple things. Thank you very much, please, open doors, and this is with anybody, from my manager to the complete stranger that I don't know. And that's just the basics. I think that works for me.
And any big regrets,
There are always regrets. I mean, people can tell you, no regrets, but there are always regrets. But I don't know if I want to share any massive regrets.
Yeah, I know.
Right, so.
I gotta say, I think your whole idea of like, you wear kind of your emotions on your sleeve is also, I think, what makes people like attracted to you, like as a leader and as a teammate, is that you don't have an agenda. That people know.
It was really funny you mentioned that. I used to have a very good friend of mine that used to give me a hard time about my emotions, and he put a negative connotation to it, right? And at that time I was leading a sales organization, and it's like, Dalmar, you're so easy to read, like he gave it a negative connotation, right? In the sense of I can play or whatever intention he had. And I told him, I said, look, it's very important for me, especially at that time I was leading a sales organization. So it's very important for me to wear my emotions and for my customers to be able to see it, right? Especially in sales, with the connotation that goes with it. Oh, it's sales, trying to take advantage of me. And I was very, very honest and straightforward, and it showed. Yeah. And I think a lot of my customers love that, right?
I think it's like a relationship approach rather than like you're not playing like poker with them.
No, it is not. I never, and that's what I was saying. It helped me, right? Yeah. By showing my true colors, right? No hidden agenda or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's another thing we kind of like to end on too is like, do you have any kind of guidance or wisdom you'd give people who are maybe starting out and just kind of whatever in college, high school, just in life in general?
And again, basics. Yeah. Basics will get you a long way, right? You're like, look, don't come to work dirty, scruffy, look clean. Don't be late. Be on time. Be honest. Be polite. Those are the basics. If you live by the basics, I guarantee you will go far in life, right?
Beautiful thing.
That's it. That's a very strong message, actually.
Yeah. Is there anything we didn't cover today that we wanted to?
I think those three dear people,
We'll come back to that one.
We'll come back and
episode number 2. Let me think about that.
That sounds good.
Okay.
That's a good place to end on, I think.
All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Likewise. Cheers. Thank
you. Yo, what up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to leave a rating, a review, what have you. But most of all, go have a fantastical day. Okay? We'll see you soon. Goodbye.